Hello, everybody. My name is John D. Healy, and people know me because I wrote this book, and that's how it all started. My podcast is called It's Good to Talk on SwahiliMovement.com. And my guest today, I always have a different guest every day, and they're always interesting and informative. My guest today is Catherine Rose, also known as Katie. So, Katie, please tell my listeners where you were born and how you got to where you are in the world today. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, John. Nice to be here. Like he said, my name's Catherine. I go by Katie. I go by Kat. But I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, and studied all through college in the state of Iowa. But I do reside in New York City. I think a good place to start in regards to where my interest of writing came about is really having a mother that was an English major, and she studied and attended college in the state of Illinois, where she's from, and it was really important to her that all of her children, there's 8 of us, spoke grammatically correct and wrote grammatically correct. So to this day, and she's 84 years old, she will correct your grammar if you say something incorrectly. And I think that's very important. It used to be very annoying at times, but I think it certainly gave me a platform to be interested in reading and writing. I studied Latin as well, which obviously gave me a little bit of background in the English language, as all words really are derived from Latin, and studied that in high school as well. So I guess the first entree into really writing as a young adult was when I was 16 years old, and I found out about a contest that was at the local university called Drake, and they were asking for submittals of stories about personal narrative stories. And I thought, well, maybe I should submit something. I have some stories to tell. And the one that really jumped in my mind was a story that I had written, a few years back about my grandfather's death. And so that happened when I was a very young girl. I was 8 years old. And so it really, stuck in my mind, and it stuck on everyone's mind. I think we could still envision that day to day. So I decided that would be a good piece for me to write about because it was so entrenched in my mind. But the interesting part of it is that I wrote it as an 8-year-old's mind and what those feelings and thoughts were, going through all that emotion with losing this patriarch in our family that was so important to everybody. So
Very,
pardon.
that is very, very interesting and unique.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised that you won an award for that because I think at that young age to have the creativity and, well, the memory was obviously there because with your grandfather, he was obviously close to you. And without a doubt, your mother was a huge help in terms of, I guess, grammar and spelling and so on and so forth and all that. How many pages was in the story or words, or do you remember?
It was a short story. I think it was about 8 to 10 pages.
Right.
And it was a lot of conversation and a lot of dialogue that I remember. People, specifically my boyfriend, will say I have a steel trap mind. So I can remember details about things from 30, 40 years ago, which is kind of frightening. And so I was, back then, that was not
That's like my friend behind me. Yeah, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
In one way, and maybe a curse in another. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was able to really replicate some of the conversations and thoughts and feelings that were going on amongst this massive group of people that came together to celebrate his life. So 8 to 10 pages, that seemed like a significant amount at that point.
Absolutely. It's very significant, and very significant insofar as the detail. And also, if I may add, from my psychology point of view, it was therapy for you as a young child to be able to put those thoughts on paper and reminisce. You and I actually have more in common than we think. Because you're the youngest of 8, I'm the youngest of 10. My mother was a devil for grammar as well. It was always you and I, not me and you, okay?
Correct.
You got that one correct, yeah. And I also studied Latin for a year as well. So maybe that gives us a few things in common. So getting back to that writing period, you moved on from there and you obviously went to university. Did you follow up with studying English or writing?
I did. And, ironically enough, I grew up in the state of Iowa, where the University of Iowa Writers Workshop is a very renowned place for some of the greatest authors ever of the 20th century to
Wow.
teach and to attend. So I didn't look at upon that way necessarily at that point in
Fine,
my
yeah.
life. I was looking at it like, okay, well, a state school, I can afford it, and I'd gotten in many colleges, but I was like, well, what can I afford? And then people would say, well, you're at the best place for the best program in what you're studying, and so why go somewhere else? And they were correct. I mean, we had a really strong journalism program. I actually started off in journalism, and I pivoted my sophomore year and decided I really wanted to emphasize in creative writing and English, and that's where I continued my interest and passion for writing all through my collegiate career.
Mm. So, like going forward, we say, like your next maybe goal or ambition maybe would be to write a novel or write something. Would you be going like for fiction? I guess perhaps maybe.
Nonfiction, I think that I have a lot of interesting stories and kind of some characters that I've met throughout my life. I've
Right.
lived all over the United States. And just the folks that I've met in New York City, I think that could
Mm.
be some interesting stories. I think from my perspective, it's easier to write when it's honest and it's actual
Yeah.
factual,
Well,
where, that's, I think you're going to have more impactful writing
I
when,
totally agree because like with with this book actually, that's what Stoney did, and he wrote it with a pencil. There's a little icon of a pencil on the book there. So he wrote it with a pencil, and I had to edit it and
mm,
use, pardon the pun, a rubber eraser. Okay,
sure.
your mother would slap you for that one, of course. And the stories are true, and the stories are honest. And when someone like yourself has such a vivid memory for detail, uh, then definitely put it on paper. And I guess what I got Stoney to do was, well, he put it all on paper,
Hmm.
but it was a bit to get it flowing. And a literary agent of mine called Mitch Douglas taught me enough to know it must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, so it starts. Say it could start with your grandfather's story, for example. Could start there. That would be a very good starting point, and then kind of go from there in a sequence of stories through your life and various people that you've met along the way. I met
Yeah, that's a great idea.
another famous writer I met was Maeve Binchy from Ireland. She wrote a lot of girly books, and I met her at a TV show one night, and a bunch of young girls were around her, and they wanted her advice. Maeve, how do you write a book? And she said, I'll tell you. You write one page every day, and at the end of the year, you have a book.
Wow.
So don't get like writer's cramp or
Sure.
you can't go forward, you can't do it, and you just do it, and then you can edit it, at the end and say that fits in or should fit in or whatever. But once you get it all together, I think we have like 295 pages in this book, which is enough.
Hmm.
I hope he stopped writing. Tony, stop writing. And then you'll see the reward of it, and then you'll see the enjoyment of it. But I do want to encourage you, and if there's any way I can help you, certainly try to do so. What do you do today in your present day job?
Yeah, I sell advertising, so I'm constantly reading and proofreading, and it's very important because this is the first impression of this brand to get in front of their customer or their job seeker or their
Yeah,
audience. So uh, I think a lot of businesses kind of they don't appreciate someone that can read and write it effectively and even write an email. And so being a
correct.
liberal arts major in business has actually given me a lot of advantage and leverage.
Right.
So I can learn the
Yeah.
business. You can't read and write. You can't learn how to read and write effectively if you didn't at a young age. So
Yeah.
I think
No,
that
I totally
like
agree. Earlier today, I had Tom Sanchez on for a podcast like yourself, and he works for the United Print Group, which is all to do with advertising and
okay.
branding and promotional products. And I think above anything in any industry, you must get it right when it comes to that, like in terms of advertising, as you do, I'm sure,
Sure.
professionally. And do you want to say the name of the company you work for? Or?
I'm in between. So I'm
Yeah, whatever.
consulting right now, so I'd rather not. But I think,
And
you know,
if my listeners want to get in touch with you, say for help with the book or ask with the book or promote the book, I guess they can find you through me, obviously.
Sure. My email, or I'm on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to help. I'm a part of different networking
Right.
organizations, and I always want to help somebody because someone always helped me. So,
Well, that's for sure. That's like I'm a member of like BNI,
mm,
Business Networking Group, and that's our slogan, like givers gain,
yeah.
And I always end with a quotation of my podcast. I don't know, I've used so many. Let me see if I have one here. So my mother used to say, the older you get, the better you get, unless you're a banana. And that's from me, by the way. That's it.
That's a great quote.
Well, I think she borrowed it from Betty White.
Okay.
But that's okay. It's okay to borrow something if you can make use of it.
Certainly.
Yeah. So if you have anything else to add, and otherwise we'll wrap up.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your time, and I think anyone that's out there that
I,
wants to
I
write,
appreciate your time as well. Time is what we have, and time is important. And that's why I like to stay on those podcasts, to have people like yourself that are interesting and have a story to tell, and maybe someone listening and say, well, maybe I could write a book. Well, if you're listening out there driving your car, you probably could. There's a book in everybody, but you have to like process it and say, okay, where, how, and what.
correct.
So
Well,
thank you
thanks
once
again.
again.
Have a
Bye.
great evening. Bye.
Bye.